association, we're the global industry organization that supports Bitcoin SV. As I just discussed in the last speech, it's using the original Bitcoin protocol to power enterprise data applications as well as payments. We're having a panel today to really dig into the practicalities of how blockchain technology can make better applications for business as well as data. And with me are representatives from 4 different companies in our ecosystem. Daniel Lipshitz, CEO of Gap 600 from Tel Aviv, Israel. Hey, Daniel. Stephan Nilsson, co-founder and CEO of UNISOT from Norway. Simit Naik, Director of Business Services from nChain, coming from the United Kingdom. And Kaal, Suurkask, Vice President, Business Development for TAAL, Distributed Information Technologies from Canada/Switzerland. Hi, Kaal. All right, I'm going to ask each of them to just briefly introduce themselves and tell us about their particular company and what role it plays in the blockchain ecosystem. Stephan, we'll start with you.
All right, so my name is Stephan Nilsson. I'm the co-founder and CEO of UNISOT. UNISOT is an enterprise supply chain management system that is based on the public blockchain. We do different solutions. One we are going to talk about here is a seafood industry solution that you're going to hear about later on.
Okay, Daniel.
Good morning, everyone. I run a company, Gap 600. We're very active in the digital currency space. We enable instant deposits and instant payments for payment processes and exchanges. We're also looking to build and develop added value services around data integrity.
Simit.
Good afternoon, everyone. Simit Naik from nChain. nChain is a global leader in research and development of blockchain services and products based out of London. We have sort of 3 main divisions: research, engineering, and business services. So I look after a lot of the client engagements with some of the large enterprise clients that we're working with across financial services, healthcare, and government.
Okay, and Kaal.
Yeah, good afternoon. My name is Kaal Suurkask. I'm the head of business services for TAAL. TAAL is a publicly listed blockchain infrastructure and technology company based in Canada and Switzerland. We work with our enterprise clients to help them write their data through transactions onto the blockchain. So around that transaction processing business, we have blockchain storage, we have a tokenization platform, a bit of a blockchain search tool as well. So we essentially work with businesses that want to build applications on blockchain, and we help them do that in a simple, secure, and in a regulatory compliant manner. So.
Stephan, let's dig into fish. All right, so Stephan spends a lot of his time with fish. Will you tell us about your platform, Seafood Chain, how it uses a public blockchain in particular, how you think it will make life and food better for consumers and businesses?
Yes, of course. So Seafood Chain is our industry solution for the seafood industry. And what we see in the seafood industry is that there are very little digitalized, a lot of manual work is done. So what we provide to them with our solution in the supply chain management solution is tools to prove the quality of the product, which is a problem for them to do today. We also help them to prove the sustainability of their product and also the product provenance, where the product has been, how it's been treated, and so on. And the important thing with what we are doing here is that we are using this public blockchain because it's globally available. So the system is available for, even for the smallest fisherman can be included in this system, as well as the biggest Walmart, Nestle, and so on. They can also be involved in this system.
And your system collects very granular pieces of data about the fish and along its journey. How can that be monetized, since we've talked about fusing data and money?
Yeah, so that's a very important thing. That what we do in our system is that we're actually collecting information from every step in the supply chain. So every step from fish eggs, the DNA of the fish egg, how the fish has been brought up, and how they're harvested, slaughtered, and transported all the way out to the restaurant. And by taking these small pieces of information and put them into the blockchain, we can now monetize that information, or not we, but the actors in the supply chain can monetize this information, which means that they can now buy and sell information, small pieces of information like a temperature or a weight or a location. They can now start selling to other actors in the supply chain. So a small fisherman can now monetize of the information of where he fished the fish, how big it was, where it came from, what sort it was. And that can be used by the processor or by the restaurant, or even information all the way out to the end consumers.
Yeah, a lot to know about fish. Right. So Simit, nChain helps enterprises develop blockchain applications. Can you give our audience some examples of the types of projects or industries nChain's working on now that will create blockchain applications that help companies get more out of their data, such as Stephan's been talking about?
Yeah, sure. So at nChain, we've put a lot of effort in trying to make it accessible for people to build on blockchain. You know, blockchain is an extremely complex and complicated technology. We're still early in the adoption cycle, and so we spent a lot of time, you know, not only researching different tools and methods and products and services that we can build on top, but we've built out a whole kind of product layer. So we abstract all the complexity away from blockchain, and make it very easy for our enterprise clients to build on top of not only blockchain, but some of the proprietary work that nChain have done over the last sort of 5-6 years. And so, you know, within our kind of key industries, so within healthcare, you know, we've helped EHR Data, who you'll hear from afterwards on the panel after this. And what we've done with them is try to create a single source of the truth, you know, maintain the integrity of the data, reduce the data silos. And so, you know, the first kind of principle for that project was to remove data silos, make it easy for people to get a single source of the truth for all healthcare information related to a patient. But the next stage is then, you know, monetizing and increasing the value of that data for the patient themselves. So we make it easy for patients to be able to own the data, to permission the data, to share that data with other healthcare organizations across the United States and across the world. And so, as Jimmy mentioned before, we see data being the most valuable commodity of the 21st century. And so EHR Data is one of our kind of flagship projects where data is center to everything we do. We empower the patient, but we also give the patient a way for them to be able to, I guess, benefit from the valuable data that, you know, we all collect across the kind of different interactions with healthcare providers on a day-to-day basis. But more recently, we've just signed a deal with a country in the South Pacific. And for them, what we're doing is...
This is breaking news, people, from the blockchain
Yeah.
world. Breaking news heard here at the Ritossa Summit.
That's right. And so what we're doing for them is we're digitizing their national currency. But we don't just stop there. We also understand that this country has a particular set of challenges. It's one of the lowest lying islands in the world. And so their biggest threat is not technology or cultural, it's climate change. And so in order to prepare for the challenges that are coming, they want to undertake a huge digital transformation project. They want to become a paperless society. And so not only are we converting coins and notes into sort of digital representations, but we're also digitizing the whole registry services. So everything from citizenships to driving license to police records to land registry. And this is not just to kind of, you know, develop technology and implement technology for technology's sake, but it's there to address a significant challenge that they're going to face within the next 5 to 10 years. And so we're working with them to undertake a very significant phase of discovery and propose a solution where the whole society is now a digital society. And it will make it easy for that country to then be able to move once, you know, their islands are submerged. And so, you know, it is a significant project because it shows that actually the technology exists, and as long as we find the right problem for blockchain technology to provide a significant benefit, then it helps to build a kind of momentum and adoption of blockchain technology. It's finding the right use case and finding the right challenge and the needs where that technology is going to make a huge difference. And for this island, you know, blockchain technology is the only technology that's going to help them to achieve their digital transformation goals.
And that's being built on Bitcoin SV?
It is, yes. And the reason being is that because we're doing payments, plus we are doing data, not every chain can do both. Some chains can do data, some chains can do value, but it's very difficult to find a chain that allows us to not only capture the data, but overlay a kind of payments rail on top. And so, you know, we are going to digitize the national currency, so it's going to be a purely digital economy, but we also then want to monetize the data itself that we are capturing across the islands, across the kind of different government departments, because not only does that build transparency, it also helps them with their aims and objectives to bring in foreign investment because it provides transparency of the data itself.
Right. Talking about the value of data, let's go to Kaal. The entire business model of your company, TAAL, is focused on processing blockchain data, especially at enterprise scale. Why do you think that data transactions are valuable? People call them the new oil of this, economy. And why do you think traditional investors, particularly like people at family offices, should be looking at supporting companies that are in the value data chain?
Yeah, thank you for that. Data becomes massively valuable the moment you can authenticate it, you can prove that it can't be tampered with, and then you can combine it with a bunch of other data sources. And then if you can make sense of it, then you have some magic. And I think that's where blockchain comes in particular for us, the Bitcoin SV blockchain. We're starting to see and we know this, a world where a lot of the physical and the virtual lines are blurring. There's going to be a lot more data with the advent of IoT, smart city initiatives such like Dubai is doing, autonomous vehicles. All of this is data, and to us, data is very transactional. And so TAAL, as a transaction processor, is in a unique position as a gateway to the blockchain to sit here and see some of these use cases and these concepts and ideas manifest and materialize over the next few years. So, and I think when we're this gateway, we're this transaction processor, this makes a really good business case for a lot of our investors.
Got it. And Daniel, in addition to running your own company, Gap 600, you're also the Israel ambassador for our Bitcoin Association, and you're someone I know who has followed the journey of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency for many years. Why have you settled into believing that the Bitcoin SV blockchain is the best option for enterprise applications?
So, as you mentioned, I have been relatively involved in the cryptocurrency and blockchain space. It's a very spicy, very revolutionary environment, and with a lot of promises and failures along the route. When the clarity of Bitcoin SV came to fruition, it was very obvious that the most compelling option that would create interest from services that are going to drive mass adoption would require absolute scalability and absolute stability. And this was pre-designed in the Bitcoin Satoshi Nakamoto white paper, and is actually what birthed this whole revolution and colorful industry. And from then, it was actually warped into certain distortions. And what Bitcoin SV brings forward is actually a return to that enticing and attractive vision of both advancing economic freedom, advancing data integrity, and eventually becoming something that we'll touch every day, but we're actually completely unaware of.
A couple of people have mentioned data integrity. Why do you think that is so important for businesses and the world to improve, and how do you think blockchain technology advances data integrity?
So data integrity is a critical aspect in any enterprise, in any business, and integrity is obviously how we function, and Dubai is an absolute example of a success built on integrity. the absolute, or one of the absolute forefronts that blockchain, led by Bitcoin SV, has brought to fruition is not necessarily enabling data integrity. There's ways to do data integrity. There are timestamping services. There are custodians. There are other services can ensure data. What the blockchain and BSV has enabled and pushes an enormous efficiency across a whole range of industries is the capacity to do data integrity on a micro level. So you can do data integrity on every single aspect and point.
Like the temperature of fish at a particular date and time.
Like the temperature of fish, or like the response to a medical service in a far out capacity, and so it's very, in essence, very uneventful, very boring aspect. But if you can ensure that the data that you're processing is valid and has been time-stamped, as you mentioned, right. You're capable to monitor, you're capable to do assessment of your social goals, of your environment goals, of your government goals, and as such implement accurately changes which will affect, because you are able to trust the information you're getting. The minute that we have a time delay in submission of data, there are incentives which come to play, sure, of people trying to meet those incentives, and as such, alter data affecting your assessment of your current situation.
All right, Stephan, we talked quite a bit about the value of breaking down data silos. Can you give us examples of how you're doing that specifically for the supply chain industry with your product?
Yes, of course. So my background, I've been working 20 years as a SAP integration architect in the enterprise system world, and I've seen the problem that company has with their data silos. Every company is acquiring a lot of data and keeping them in a lot of different systems, even inside one company, and every company is doing that, and that creates these problems with data silos. And we can break these data silos down by using the blockchain, by monetizing information, as I was talking about. And that makes the whole ecosystem of information between companies from all places in the supply chain much more efficient. They now have economic incentives to start exchanging data. And that was a big problem before that. By using these old technologies back from the 80s, like EDI and EDIFACT, it was very, very expensive, unsecure, and very slow to set up interface between different companies. Now, by using the public blockchain, the Bitcoin SV blockchain, we now have one global data layer. Just like we have one global internet today, we have one global data layer that every actor in the supply chain can connect to and exchange information and buy and sell information.
So Kaal, TAAL is developing a token platform. Will you tell us about that and how you think your approach to a token platform will better optimize tokens for businesses?
Sure. This is a really exciting space for us. As a transaction processor, by having a tokenization platform, you're creating more transactions. But what's really interesting is all the use cases that are coming out of tokenization. So being able to tokenize real-world assets, and it's very exciting when you think about what you can do in terms of having fractional ownership, for example, in real estate, or being able to tokenize rewards from airlines. So, when I flew here on Emirates, I'd love to have used my Air Canada Star Alliance points, but I couldn't combine those together. So if you're able to tokenize those rewards, for example, you could trade the Emirates points with somebody that wants to trade a token to get on Air Canada. So I could have used some points or upgraded on my flight here. But more interesting cases for me are real estate. When I was in my early 20s, I had my eye on real estate, and I bought my first apartment in Canada, and I had to put $5,000 down back in the day, and for a $100,000 apartment. And that was barely affordable for me. But nowadays, any young person, anybody in their 20s that wants to get into the real estate market, it has to put a minimum, at least in Canada and most places around the world, at least 100,000, so in this case, Canadian dollars. That is just not realistic. And so can you imagine you could tokenize or you could fractionalize real estate and you tokenize an apartment or a hotel, for example, here. And we're starting to see use cases like this. So, a 25-year-old could come in and buy $50 worth of a token for this hotel and hope that appreciates over time and that token becomes more valuable. Imagine they could trade it now on a secondary platform. Trade it for a steak in a restaurant. And so why that's really interesting is it gives a lot of people that would be otherwise be locked out of the real estate market, for example, an opportunity to get inside to the market. It breaks down the barriers, it creates a little more equality. But on the other side of it, from the investors or the real estate holders, they now have an opportunity to create more liquidity. And get more people in the market. So there are many use cases now we're starting to see with tokens. So that's what really excites us, and it's a growing space.
And really quickly, I think this is an important question, which is a lot of companies now use cloud services to store their data. And a common question we get is, well, why should I use the blockchain for my data versus cloud services? What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to when we talk to clients, it's a lot of feedback we get right now where people, they just know that, hey, putting your data in the cloud or in a private server is the way it's done. When you explain about the benefits of an open blockchain, such as BSV, where it can scale, you can put a lot of data on that if you want to. Not all data needs to go on the blockchain, but if you do, you can do that. And as I mentioned earlier, as there's a lot more digital data and we have out there, we're going to need businesses to be able to store a lot of this data. And then once you're able to store it, you can create all these new types of businesses based off that data. So the other side of it is when you're on an open blockchain and you have data stored there, you're not subject to some of the outages or the possible hacks or with private databases that you would be. And most importantly, the way I look at it is it takes control out of a third party or a central party, so we're starting to see a lot of that with social media platforms and big tech, and it actually now takes all of that and puts it back, all of that control of data, and puts it back into the arms or the hands of the individual users. So any business now that can build a business around that concept, I think is really setting themselves up for success over the next few years when people start to understand the value of blockchain, an open blockchain.
Simit, what's the one problem you hear most from companies that they're trying to solve by using blockchain technology?
So it's going to be a bit controversial, but a lot of the companies I speak to don't really understand their problem. They think blockchain is a golden solution for everything that they're facing. And so what we do is we actually try and understand what is the driver, what is the problem they're facing. And actually, when we do that, we start to understand what they're actually looking to do. So in financial services, for example, everyone's looking at blockchain to do tokenization, to do this, that, and the other. But when you actually get to the crux of the problem, what they're looking to do is bring more liquidity into illiquid assets, for example. And so blockchain and token solutions help in doing that. It brings more liquidity into illiquid assets. We heard about that this morning when we were talking about diamonds as investments. Kaal mentioned property, but we're also looking at fractionalizing things like power plants and shipping containers and even cargo ships. And so we're trying to bring more liquidity into those markets. A big area that I lead on at nChain is in central banks and looking at the idea of central bank digital currencies. And so again, cash is a vital tool for a lot of the population on this earth, but there are a lot of challenges. So what we've done is, we've listened to the ECB, we've listened to the Bank of International Settlements, and even the Bank of England and some of the central banks. But what we've done is we've gone further. We've tried to understand some of the issues that they're going to face with other technology, and we position blockchain as the ideal way of providing a private, yet secure and a resilient payment system that will provide more resilience to the overall payment landscape. And so, we have to put in that work because we're still early in that kind of adoption cycle. And so we find when we speak to people that the problems they think they have aren't really the problems. There is a deeper problem. And for some of those, blockchain definitely is the answer.
All right, Daniel, we're winding down. So quick question about honesty and blockchain. What are some of the use cases you're seeing coming out of Israel that are really innovative to create a more honest business and world using blockchain technology?
In Israel, and obviously it's a great privilege for me as an Israeli to be here. In Israel, it's a very much a reflection of the blockchain and cryptocurrency world, and there's a whole movement and vibrant exchange of ideas. Some of them are less impressive, some of them more impressive. I would say more of the standard stuff. There's a lot of talk around custody developments. There's a lot of talk around sharing of data, of sharing of keys, all still very much focused on financial aspects. There are still, in this whole space, there are still very forward-thinking or dangerous-thinking aspects which probably should still be avoided. So what my recommendation would be is that to view blockchain and Bitcoin SV to be used in places where it can enhance existing real business cases, and I think following that route will lead to greater mass adoption and added value to the economies.
Great. And to wrap up, in 15 seconds, I'm going to give each of the other three a chance to tell the investors why they support your venture or your ecosystem. Stephan.
Yeah, I should say that UNISOT, which stands for Universal Source of Truth, is rather unique or very unique as an enterprise company that are building on this public blockchain. And we do that for 4 reasons, and that is security, scalability, stability, and the cost efficiency. And we don't find that in any other blockchain technology, and that's exactly what we need in the enterprise.
Kaal.
Yeah, as mentioned earlier, I think we've determined that the blockchain that we use, the Bitcoin SV blockchain, can scale, and we think it's going to grow. And we're seeing a lot more innovation happening on it. And TAAL is the gateway, the transaction processor to that world. That blockchain puts us in a really unique position and allows us, and I think our investors, to kind of look at our compelling business case.
Simit?
So even though we are seeing acceleration in innovation, I think we've still got this tendency to put blockchain in a box, whereas actually what blockchain allows you to do is redefine the boundaries of the box. So rather than thinking about blockchain being a kind of simple swap for something that exists, blockchain gives you the ability to rethink how you do business or solve challenges. And that's where nChain come in. We're at the forefront of that thinking. We've got the largest portfolio of IP related to blockchain in the world, got the largest blockchain development team in the world, and we're working with some of the biggest enterprises across kind of central banks, financial services, and healthcare. So we are redefining that box.
Daniel, anything you want to add for yourself?
I would just add, I would just reiterate about that the whole Bitcoin SV approach is about solving real existing business challenges. These are not new business challenges, but the promise of Bitcoin SV is to bring a massive amount of efficiency to these services and enhance economies, enhance our lives and touch our lives. But I think the most important thing to remember, we're actually going to be completely unaware of it.
All right, thank you to all the panelists. I appreciate you listening as they talked about how blockchain can create better business and data applications for the world. Please give them a round of applause.
Thank you.